Crown Jewel from Crown Jewel Boxing, back with a gym. Well, I will say I was partially wrong. And what I was wrong in was not the strategic uh, plans that were carried out in the fight or the skill levels of the two guys in the fight last night. Of course, I'm talking about King Ryan Garcia and Devin the Dream Haney. Um, I was wrong in that I bought into the antics. And I thought, well, first of all, I still don't think Ryan was faking. I do think Ryan, needs some help. I do think his way of promoting the fight and the things he was saying and doing were unconventional and were not indicative of someone who's a world class fighter and serious about the biggest fight, the second biggest fight of their life approaching. But with that being said, even still, with the late night partying, with lack of focus, lack of discipline, um, he still was too much for Devin Haney. And the reality is this: I've spoke on numerous occasions about Devin Haney being a really good fighter, a really good boxer, but having holes in his game. And they was no more evident than they were last night. I said a while back, and go back and check my videos. I said, after watching the Jorge Linares fight, and a few times talking about Devin can only defend two punches at a time. Once a guy puts three or four together, he gets clipped by that third or fourth punch almost every time. The thing about it is he's normally fights smaller guys to where he can keep them on the end of his jab, and most of his competition have not been big punchers, so he's been able to keep them at bay. Regis Prograis could could punch a little bit, but his feet were terrible, and he looked like he had seen better days. His legs were terrible against Devin, and he was just too slow, um, and lacked the type of skill that would allow him to have success about against Devin. With that being said, though, in all honesty, Devin Haney is who I've always thought he was. He's a skilled boxer, yes, not terribly gifted athletically, not really strong. And he fought somebody as big as him, or if not a little bigger, for the first time last night, and we saw what happened. A lot of people, when I'm on Knockouts Live or I'm on other people channels live, they get mad at me when I say Devin don't have a chin. They say, "How can you say he didn't have a chin? He's never been down." Well, he was down five times last night. Three of them were counted, but he was down five times. And it pains me to say this because I'm from Jersey and I rep and rock with everything from Jersey. And Harvey Dock is one of the top referees in the game, but he had a horrible night last night. And I'm not going to go as far as the some that say he was bought or anything like that. I'm just going to charge it to him having an off night because I really don't want to look at it any other way. I think he's a man of integrity, and I don't believe he was bought or partial to one fighter. But I will just say he didn't have a whole lot of control of the fight. The time when he took a point from Ryan after the knockdown, I thought that was unwarranted. Why did I think it was unwarranted? Because he had been for over 10 seconds trying to get Devin Haney to break a clinch. He was physically trying to pull him apart. He had said break a bunch of times. Devin refused to release the clinch. Ryan hit him. If anything, if you're going to take a point, you got to take a point from both of them because Devin was blatantly ignoring your commands as well. So hitting on the break, to me, is no different than failing to break a clinch when you're ordered to do so by a ref. They both discarded his orders. So either you admonish both warning or you take a point from both. But to take a point from Ryan at that point when Devin was blatantly ignoring the ref and refusing to release the clinch, I think wasn't cool. Also, he went down two more times in that round, and they weren't considered knockdowns. But if you get hit and hurt and go for a clinch and can't clinch, and your legs are not under you, and you fall to the canvas, that's a knockdown. And to be honest, I think if not for the ref, um, Devin Haney would not have made it out of that seventh round. Probably shouldn't have made it out of that seventh round. And I think the pride and pre-fight talk of his dad allowed him to stay in that fight a little longer than he probably should have. But I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Even though I thought Devin had his moments and won more rounds than Ryan, Ryan's moments were much more impactful, much more brutal, and there's no guarantee that Devin Haney is going to be the same after the beating he sustained last night. Now, some people will say, well, if he won more rounds, how can you say he sustained the beating? Look at his face and look at Ryan's face at the end of the fight, and that will tell you, who sustained the beating. Um, I think he may have. There's rumors out there, but it certainly looked like he may have a broken jaw. And that's unfortunate. Like I said going into the fight, I didn't want to see either one of them seriously injured. I didn't like either one of them talking about killing the next man and their intent to end the life of their opponent. I didn't respect that from either one. But both guys talk big, and especially Devin's trainer and father and Bill talk real big. I bet you won't meet him in the center of the ring. We're going to knock him out. I'm sending my son to kill him. Um, don't let the kids watch the fight. It's going to be brutal. You're right, Bill. It was brutal. It was brutal, but you was on the wrong side of the brutality, and your son took a very big beating. And I'm going to say this: I'm disappointed in Bill. Because last night may have been the first time I've seen Devin do a post-fight interview that Bill didn't jump in and take over. Not only did he not jump in and take over, he did not even allow himself to be visible in the camera shot, and he actually had his back turned to Devin while Devin was doing the interview. Nah. See, me, I'm a father myself, a proud father. And I have a son who recently started boxing. And I'm going to tell you this. You can take this to the bank. Win, lose, or draw, gorgeous performance or ugly loss, I'm gonna stand next to mine, put my arm around him, and take whatever comes with that. And I think that's what a real father, trainer, manager, business partner, all the hats he holds for Devin should do. Don't just jump up and down and be braggadocious and talk that talk when your son does well. You know what I mean? You run around with his belt and you want to celebrate all his victories and own them as if they're your own. Own them defeats too. Own them dark moments too. Don't turn your back when things don't go well. And I ain't gonna front. That instruction in the corner was lacking. You sent your son to stand in front of a guy that was quicker handed than him and a much bigger puncher than him. And you know your son. So you know your son, as I've said for a long time, don't have the best chin in boxing. Don't have a really reliable chin when it comes to big punches. Why would you put your son in that situation? You sent your son out there in a position to look bad and to lose. And that's exactly what happened. Um, I'm gonna say this. Like I said, I believe that Ryan, was going through all the things he was going through. And I don't believe he was in the best of shape, which is why he could only fight in spots. But in fighting in spots and loading up on occasional left hooks and, occasionally putting two or three shots together was more than enough to neutralize everything supposedly that Devin Haney brings to the game. And I'm gonna say this, like I said, I don't like tearing young fighters down, but I have to respond when big talk is talk. I have to respond to whether or not it's sufficient or not, or if it's true or not. And it's just not true. Like he's a Mount. He's headed for Mount Rushmore of boxing. He's ahead of where Floyd was at this time in his career. He's top pound for pound fighter in boxing, according to his dad. He's the face of boxing, none of which is true. By definition, the face of boxing is the guy that's most recognizable. If you take him into a mall somewhere, he's not going to be more recognizable than a guy like Gervonta Tank Davis or Saul Canelo Alvarez. He's just not. So by definition, he cannot be the face of boxing. So we can put that to bed. That's number one. Number two, he doesn't have the best jab in boxing because his jab was not able to neutralize Ryan and keep Ryan off of him. So we can put that to bed. He's not one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world because I don't think there's anybody that even had 15 or 20 pound for pound in boxing, and he just completely crushed Devin last night. So we can't say he's a pound for pound great. The next Floyd Mayweather, we've never seen Floyd Mayweather on his back. So, the Devin Haney era never started. But if you believe Bill, and the Devin Haney era started in the last year, well, it started and came to an end just as abruptly as it came to an end just as abruptly as it started. Devin Haney, unfortunately, is a very talented, very special fighter, very good fighter, but he is not what his father or these various YouTube channels make him out to be. Unfortunately, um, I do celebrate him. He's a young black man who, you know, grew up with a father that pushed him to greatness, and he actually achieved that. Because you can't deny a man that's held 4 world titles in 2 different weight classes and made himself into a millionaire in the career of his choice. I can't frown upon that. I can't look down on that, and I don't think anybody else should either. Well, with that being said, he's a far cry from what his father claims him to be. He's a far cry from what these YouTube channels claim him to be. And I think he was exposed on last night. Unfortunately for Devin, some people say he'll be back. I'm sure he will. I'm not sure he's going to be the same, number one. And number two, he's not going to be given the same respect by his opponents, which is going to make things extremely difficult because everybody's seen his defensive lapses last night. And everybody's seen that if you're willing to just walk to him and put your hands together, he's going to have problems. Again, he has no problem defending the first and second shot, but that third and fourth shot seems to get him every time. Shout out to Jorge Linares. So I don't want to see no excuses. The 3 pounds he agreed to, I believe it happened even before the final presser. But they discussed that at the final presser, a $500,000 per pound. You think they just agreed that quick in front of everybody on a $500,000 a pound and it ended up being 1.5? It ended up coming to fruition the very next day? No, I'm sure that was worked out behind the scenes. I'm sure, you know, Ryan knew, Oscar knew that he wasn't going to make weight. And I'm going to say this. Ryan looked completely dry in his live the night before the weigh-in. He looked more sucked in than Devin did. And in the post-fight presser, he said, listen, I can't make 140. I can't get no lower than 143. So if y'all want to say, Devin was weight drained, Ryan looked just as weight drained. You know what I mean? He said he couldn't get the 143. He definitely said there isn't going to be another Tank fight because he's a 147 pounder. That came out of his mouth. And he said if Devin wants to fight him, he has to come up because he's not coming back down to 140. So he holds all the cards. In my humble opinion, I think Devin and Bill are going to use that as an excuse not to take the rematch because I don't think they want it. Because I'm going to be honest with you. If you look at what happened last night, I think Ryan can improve and fight better than he did last night. And I think it will be even worse next time when he's coming in even more confident and in better shape, more focused. I think it'll spell disaster even more for Devin Haney. And at some point, we're just going to have to accept the fact that some guys are really good fighters, and no matter how much they tell you or their father tells you, they're not great. And that describes Devin Haney. A really good fighter, but he's not great. And I think it's midnight. I think all of his deficiencies have been completely exposed. And I think, the other fighters he fights from here on out are going to play on that. He's not a small guy himself. So, I mean, if he can't take those shots from Ryan, where does he go from here? So, Bril Matias destroys him. Anybody at the 147-pound division destroys him. That talk about him possibly fighting Jerron Boots Ennis, y'all might as well forget about that. Don't put him in the same state as Jerron Boots Ennis. Because I'm telling you now, after what Ryan did to him last night, you put him in front of Boots, his career is absolutely over, if it isn't already. Because he may be ruined. He took a lot of punishment last night. So we got to see how he comes back anyway. But again, he's not a charity case because the young man has made a lot of money. I hope he saved a lot of that money. He has fighters within his stable, so he's a promoter. I'm not saying it's over for him, but I'm saying that could be a realistic possibility because not everybody bounces back from these type of losses the same. Some people don't bounce back at all. Do we remember Meldrick Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez? I thought Meldrick Taylor actually got robbed in that fight, but he was never the same afterwards. Do you remember Bo Holyfield too? Bo was never the same after that fight. And Devin took that type of punishment last night, maybe even worse. You know what I mean? So, what the type of fighter he'll be moving forward remains to be seen. But everybody that was talking about him being one of the top fighters in the game and going to the Mount Rushmore and, the Haney mob on YouTube, I hope y'all bought the fight because most of y'all do a lot of talking, but his fans don't really support or buy the fight. And unfortunately, it's midnight. Like I said, the glass shoe came off. Who he is has been exposed. A very good fighter, not a great fighter, who has defensive flaws, is not as athletic as we may think. His jab, the great jab he has, is a really good jab, but it's a little overstated. And we always knew he distracted those top level fighters off of him, punching quick fighters off of him. Now Ryan Garcia is slow of foot. What happens with a guy like Sabril Matias, who's probably more athletic than him and punches harder than Ryan Garcia, I think? You know, what happens? You put him in there with a guy like Tank. I always said, Tank would be way too much for him. I don't think he goes 3 rounds with Tank after watching that fight last night. But I'm not going to stay on here too long belaboring the point. But I have to say, I hope everybody takes this as a lesson. These guys aren't who they say they are just because they said that's who they are. They have to actually prove it. And Ryan is the best fighter that Devin has been in the ring with to date. And it showed last night because he was nowhere near ready for what Ryan brought to the table. Kudos to Bill, Eddie Hearn, and anybody else that had something to do with moving Devin, because you guys were great matchmakers and picked the perfect fights to get him to the top of the mountain and to achieve generational wealth. But the jig is up. He has to fight now. And I said this when he had trouble making 35. I said, the jig is up because everybody at 140 is a killer, and his chin is not the greatest. So when you move up in weight and fight bigger, stronger guys, and your chin was already suspect at 135, it lends itself to stuff like this happening. And I think it only gets worse from here. But what happened remains to be seen. But that's all I have for y'all right now. I appreciate those who tuned in. Until next time, keep your hands up, your chin down, your ass off the floor. Peace.